So I'm reading something that's both a debut and a funeral. I don't write things that are like about 10 minutes long, so I was deciding between the start of a short story and I have a bad habit of writing novels that I finish and then go, oh wow, that's not so good. So this is my favorite part of a novel that I walked away from. But I'm 150 pages into the next thing, so it's good. And it's about, this is from the middle of the novel. It's really bad when the only part of your novel that you like is right in the center of the novel, as this is. And it's about two siblings in their 50s who re-meet. They were separated when they were extremely young. And the sister, who is older, is tall and dressed eccentrically, kind of need to know that. And she has lived her life in England. He's lived it in the US, and they are on the Queen Mary 2, sailing together and telling their life stories to each other as they sail towards the east coast of the US. And her name is Freddie, and his name is Arthur. All night long, they walked the promenade deck clockwise because that was how they started out. Port side, they walked in Concord with the ship, starboard against. Port side, they moved through space faster than the boat. Starboard, slower. That was math. Against the blunt edge stern, they traveled, though they could not discern this, diagonally across the sea. They passed beneath the white-bellied lifeboats that hung from the deck above, whale after whale in the Museum of Natural History. They passed by the passengers who had cocktailed and dined and danced and couldn't bear to go to bed, the men in dark suits, the women glittering, sequined, beaded, gold-threaded. If the boat sunk, those women would luminesce in the water like jellyfish. Arthur talked. When he faltered, Freddie asked a new question. The sky began to lighten, just the faintest move from black to navy blue, and Arthur was startled. Not because it was nearly morning, but because he'd forgotten that daylight was something that occurred at sea. He'd convinced himself that the middle of the ocean was a sort of outer space. They journeyed where the sun couldn't find them. By then, they were nearly at Maud's death. He looked ahead. He could see the chaise longue they would pass when he said the words, "The morning she died," and he thought, I'm not afraid of that chaise longue, nor the one after it. He could see the story of Maud's death laid out around the promenade deck as though numbers on a clock. They were things that he and Freddie had to pass by, no way to avoid them. That was all right. The morning she died, Maud went out early to buy the half and half she took in her coffee. She went to the convenience store and not the nearby 24-hour supermarket because she wanted a pack of cigarettes. She was smoking again, occasionally, sneakily. Buying cigarettes at the supermarket made her feel like a reprobate. At the convenience store, you could ask as an afterthought. The cigarettes were there with the other sins, the boxes of condoms, the rolling papers, the lottery tickets, the tubs of Slim Jims. You only had to point. Pack of American Spirit Lights, please, she said. The girl behind the counter turned. Is that the blue, she asked. She was 18 years old, and her name was Katie Pilson. She worked at the store for 10 hours a week, 2 hours every weekday morning before school. Yellow, said Maud, and one of those scratch tickets there with the leprechaun. The convenience store was headachy, like all such stores, crammed with protein bars and tampons, security mirrors and coolers, fluorescent light. Once it had been a Little Peach with a badly painted sign that looked as though it said Little Death, and that was still what Maud and Arthur called it, though a family from Lahore had bought it and changed the name to Mini Mart. Katie Pilson tightened her ponytail, found the right color, pulled out the pack. She thumped the cigarettes on the counter and rung up Maud's things, the cream, the scratch ticket to bring home to Arthur. He'd think it was funny. Because I believe in luck, she planned to tell him, and he would point out that the leprechaun looked like her. She didn't have to sneak cigarettes. Arthur could always taste them on her breath, and he loved the taste. Kissing her, he thought, I know something about you that you think I don't. He had never really told this story before. Who robs a convenience store at 6 a.m.? A rookie and nervous kid, a guy who graduated from the local high school the year before. A kid who planned to be a cop and then got caught with a dime bag of weed and kicked out of his house. When Greg Covino pushed open the door, he was fumbling with his pockets. Maybe he would change his mind. He told himself he would. But he'd already had the gun in his hand when the girl behind the counter turned to him and said, "Hey, Greg Covino, right?"
Huh.
The gun went off. The gun went off. That was how it seemed to everyone. Greg Covino himself, Katie Pilson, whose friend Chloe had gone to the prom with Greg Covino. Katie had pictures of him at home in her prom album. Even Maud, who'd been shot in the stomach, who fell to the ground clutching her pack of cigarettes, her scratch ticket. "I didn't," Greg Covino said. His hand rung like struck metal. He showed Katie Pilson his gun. He wanted her to take it from him, but instead, she flinched. The second time, he fired on purpose, and for 5 seconds, his sense of doom was eclipsed by something wilder, merely pleasurable. Then he understood what he'd done. Maud still had 30 minutes to live. She spent 5 of them on the floor of the convenience store while Greg Covino decided what to do. Another 5 minutes in the ambulance, 25 minutes in the hospital. It took another hour for the hospital to track down her. By then, Maud was dead. Katie Pilson was dead. Greg Covino had been shot by the police 6 blocks away and would be dead in 2 hours himself, his weeping parents at his side. The story was over. The only survivor was the 39-year-old woman who dropped to the floor beneath the security mirror when Greg Covino walked in. She had teenagers and had read disaster on his face instantly. She was still holding her package of bologna when the police arrived. What Arthur couldn't forgive himself for, he told Freddie, was all that time he didn't know Maud was alive but dying, and didn't worry. He'd burrowed under the covers, reading, enjoying the extra space. She should have been back, but maybe she'd gone for a walk. She sometimes did. He must have heard the sirens driving to the store 3 blocks away, but where they lived, there were always sirens. When he thought of himself in that bed, reading the Farmer's Almanac, another present from Maud, looking up the tide tables for no good reason, when he saw himself bending back, the corn yellow cover, stretching his legs, he felt no tenderness for himself, just an abstract hatred for someone so ignorant about the facts of his life. The promenade deck girdled a buffet, and now the very old and the very young and their keepers were awake and walking through the glass doors onto the deck, taking the air or appearing with bits of breakfast. A 5-year-old with a piece of toast bitten into a boomerang, an old woman in a purple velour running suit with matching purple hand weights who seemed to disapprove of Freddie's bare feet. "And what happened to the scratch ticket?" Freddie asked. "Oh," said Arthur, "nobody ever wonders. The police gave it to me. She was cremated with it." "Intact," said Freddie, as though she'd always known. They had been walking for hours. They had gained an hour or two, the ship sailing into the headwind of time zones. They had felt the addition and did not mention it to each other, but walked on. "Oh, Arthur," said Freddie, "it's bad luck." That was it. It was bad luck, and it was done, and you couldn't struggle against it, and you couldn't find a moral. Maud's friends, her brothers, her mother spent the days after her death trying to divine meaning. They sifted through the details. How wonderful that Maud had seen her entire family at her oldest niece's wedding the week before. What a blessing that she didn't suffer for long. If she'd lived, she might have been incapacitated for the rest of her life. They hadn't had to see her in pain. The kid was dead. They wouldn't have to go through a trial. They would start a foundation in her name. The woman who'd hidden herself in the corner of the store and survived had children who wouldn't have to mourn her. Thanks be to God. To Arthur, it seemed like pulling gold from his dead wife's teeth. In truth, it was a sad, dumb story without a single consoling detail. "Bad luck, yes," he said to Freddie now. Nothing else to say about it, really. They saw the purple-clad, huffing woman advancing upon them. When she arrived, she stopped moving, though her arms didn't. They reconfigured themselves into alternating bicep curls. She was very short. "So," she said to Freddie, "what are you?" She turned to Arthur. "What is she? One of the actors?" The woman's hair had been dyed chestnut, but its natural white was shining through at the roots, which made it look as though her hairdo was hovering above her scalp. She seemed to Arthur to have walked into the dream of his life in order to remind him that, at the moments of deepest gravity, Someone is always willing to write you a parking ticket. She stood both on the deck of the ship and in that convenience store, not a chain, just a little linoleum pile joint owned by a family, wanting to complain about the noise. What actors, said Arthur. Shakespeare, isn't it? The woman indicated all of Freddie, from the bare feet ankles to the roan of her hair, the bespoke gents in between. The bespoke gents suit in between. I just saw you two walking around and around, and I figured it must be for something. Madam, said Arthur, may I present Freddie Knockboy of the Somerset Knockboys? I'm sure you've heard the name. Oh, said the woman. She tucked one dumbbell under an armpit so she could shake Freddie's hand. It's a pleasure to meet you. Her manicure looked like Jordan Almond's, a candy Arthur had always loathed. Instead of taking her hand, Freddie bowed. Pleasure, she said joylessly. As they walked away, Freddie said, strangers can be awful, can't they? It's been so long since I met one. I've forgotten.